to go live, my friend. Time to go live. See. The rock fin. Don't forget about the rock fin. Rock fin is slow. Slow, slow, slow. All right, here we go. Doo-be-doo-be-doo. Doo-be-doo-be-doo. Doo-be-doo-be-doo.
I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
Doo-be-doo-be-doo. Doo-be-doo-be-doo. Doo-be-doo-be-doo.
I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
Happy Friday, guys. Welcome. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Twitter, and Rockfin. We have made it to Friday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can find me there on Thursdays for the Roundtable and Friday for the Sabby Show. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. I want to give some shout outs to people in the chat before we get started tonight. Shout out to Overnight. There's an elephant, an umbrella, and a wolf. I don't know what that means, but welcome. Shout out to Christopher said the ruling class hates us so much they open the jails and prisons so that their violent predator trash henchmen could slaughter the most physically vulnerable among us with a focus on elderly Asians. Oh, wow. Welcome, Christopher. Shout out to Hannah G, says Sabby with a smiley face. What's going on? Greetings, Justin. Always great to see you. Gruse, Sabs. Doobie-doobie-doo. Shout out to Norman Keena, says Grub got. I also heard Krotz got in Munich once. Greetings and welcome. Shout out to CBC Voter, says 10.1K folks subscribe to Sabby Sabs. Whoop, 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 whoop. What's going on? Sean M says TGIF to all. Yes, welcome. What's going on? Bill says Sabby putting in that work on Fridays, doing 2 a day. Yep, you get to see double Sabby on Fridays. What is going on? Nick says great show. Welcome. Shout out to Lawrence. Always great to see you. Doobie-doobie-doo. What's going on? John is giving a shout out to Justin. Hi, are you German? That is a good question. Are you Justin? Are you? What's going on, VLX? I see a cigarette and a frog, a smoking frog. What's going on? Yipper99 says, hi, everybody. Shout out to Daniel, says, Sabby is a hard worker. That I am. Shout out to Eric T. Red, who's a Sabby member, says, happy Friday. We made it. Greetings, Gamer for Life, says, hello. What's going on, Edward? Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome. Shout out to Les, says happy Friday, Sabby and fellow comrades. Greetings to Dan, says no doobies in a dry state. What? I live in Massachusetts, so I don't know. I don't know about that. What's going on? Latif, aka Colossus Dragon, says peace and love. Shout out to Matt. What's going on? He says, hi, Sabby. Greetings, Javi says hello. Shout out to Terry Conley, says hello, everyone. Greetings, Gina says hello to Gamer and hey all. Gamer, you are very popular in the chat, by the way. What's going on? Janice says hello all. Yay, I actually caught you both times today. Oh, awesome. What is going on? Leroy, who's a Sabby member. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. Shout out to Corey, says Sabby, they are stealing the sellouts toothpaste. LMAO. Oh, we're going to get into that story tonight. We're going to get into it. What's going on? Larry says, hi, Sabby. Echo J says, took a peek at KD Marianne Williamson interview for the chat. Sabs is right. It was brutal, but part of me was happy so many folks are waking up to the duopoly. Yeah. That was hard to watch. What's up, Echo J? What is going on? Delthea Simmons says, hey, love y'all much. She's also a Sabby member. What's up, John? Says Sabby Sabs. I used to watch the Chappelle show. Chappelle has changed for the worse. Oh, man. There is more to this story. So I'm glad I did some research. I didn't want to just jump on screen and talk about it and not know what this was all about. So I'll get into that tonight. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen and show you what we're going to be talking about tonight. And I do want to let you know that tonight's stories do have a theme. The theme is class. So let me show you the thumbnail. Tonight, we are talking about Dave Chappelle says no. This is in reference to the housing, the affordable housing situation. Some of you may have seen this video go around on Twitter. That's how I saw it. I do have more information about that, so I'm going to get into that tonight. We're going to talk about Morning Joe smears the pores. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. You are not going to be happy to hear what they had to say. And we're going to talk about Matt Taibbi and Russell Brand had a class divide discussion about the media space. And that is something we've been talking about over at RBN a lot, actually. So it was interesting to hear it come from someone else. I can't wait to get into those stories tonight. Really quick, give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it, you guys. If you are interested, you can become a member, a Sabby, a Sabster, or the ultimate. Those are the 4 categories I have on Patreon. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. And a shout out to 2 new patrons, C. Larson Thomas and Kyle Woolley. Thank you so much. Their names are also scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So I got a lot to talk about tonight. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, the first story I want to talk about, let's start off with this Morning Joe smear, because nothing drives me more crazy than to see people who are wealthy criticize the poor people, the poors. So I'm going to get started with that story. Let me share my screen. Now, Al Sharpton actually was the one who shared this clip on Twitter. I don't think this went the way that he thought it would. So here we go. He said an alleged shoplifter has been caught on tape to appear stealing 10 steaks from New York City's Trader Joe's. I joined MSNBC to speak on the need for public safety and to address criminal justice concerns. What you are about to hear is very cringe, and they do not represent the views of me. So let's go ahead and get into this video. There is one key element that is missing from this entire discussion that is not mentioned in this video, and it drove me crazy. So here we go.
It is true that people are just walking in and walking out with it.
No, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you go to a local pharmacy, Dwayne Reed or Rite Aid, any of them, and you've got to get someone to help assist you. I mean, they have the little button there.
Yep.
You hit the buzzer, and the guy comes over and unlocks your toothpaste.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about basic stuff. What did I miss that we now have to lock up toothpaste?
God forbid. These are the things that wealthy people complain about. How dare them be inconvenienced by having to ask a clerk to go get toothpaste for them because it's locked up? I'm so sorry for you. That must be so rough and brutal. These are the things they complain about. There are more pressing issues that people have to deal with in this country. They're complaining about the fact that they have to ask a clerk to unlock toothpaste for them. This is the kind of world that they live in, ladies and gentlemen. These are the problems and issues that they have in their lives. That's not even the worst part of this video. So let me go back in.
Yeah. And
I'm just curious, Rev, really quickly. I mean, Eric Adams said he's going to do his best to fix this. I'm just curious. I mean, he's got a governor who's saying, well, I don't know that we want to give the judges any power to make decisions on whether they've seen the same bad guy in front of them like 12 times in the past week. And then you've got a DA. I know you talked to the DA. The DA's going, oh, we don't want to punish anybody unless it's like really bad. You know, so, yeah, you can steal whatever you want to steal. And, yeah, we won't do any jail time. And then you've got a woke city council. I'm just curious, is Eric Adams going to be?
These people are ridiculous. They really are. They need to ask the question, why are people having to steal food? So a shoplifter was caught on tape stealing food from Trader Joe's. Why do people have to steal food? Why would someone have to steal something like toothpaste? They're complaining about having a woke committee. They're just like, well, they don't want to, criminalize these people. I don't feel that that is the answer. I don't feel that criminalizing them is the answer. And they're not getting to the root problem. And that is what drives me crazy about this video. They're complaining about the criminal act, someone stealing food. They're not complaining about the system. They're not complaining about capitalism. They're not complaining about the reason why someone would have to steal food in the first place. This is what they don't seem to understand. This is how people, and this is why I tell you about the class divide. Wealthy people, this is how they look at these situations. Oh my God, that's such a bad person. They're stealing food. Lock them up. Lock them up. That's their response. Get them off the streets. They should be in jail instead of addressing the real problem.
Be able to do anything. Well, he's obviously surrounded by elected officials who want New York to remain chaotic.
Well, I think he's got a challenge there because there is a debate in the criminal justice system, and there are those that are concerned, including me, about overloading the system and the jails with petty crimes. But at the same time, you cannot have a culture where people are just at random, just robbing and stealing, and is out of control.
Did you guys hear the but in that comment? Notice he said, well, I don't want people in prison for petty crime, but pay close attention to that but. Because that means he does want them there. I don't want people in prison for petty crime, but we can't have this culture. So not the answer, not the answer.
And is put on the front page of newspapers, which only encourages others to do it. In fairness to Eric, he's only been mayor 5 weeks. But but even as unfair to him, Eric, they're locking up my toothpaste.
I'll say.
See how he made this about him? Is it really about someone stealing toothpaste and steaks? Or it is about the fact that he is inconvenienced because of it? Eric, they're locking up my toothpaste. Al Sharpton, you can buy toothpaste. You're more concerned about your personal inconvenience with this situation than you are about the fact that the real reason why are people having to steal these items. They're locking up my toothpaste, Eric. Give me a break. You know what's interesting about Al Sharpton? Cornel West refers to having black faces in high places and how it doesn't always work out for black people. What's interesting about Al Sharpton is a lot of people applaud him because of his efforts with civil rights. And I applaud him for that as well. But at the end of the day, Al Sharpton, why are you on here advocating to increase the criminal justice system? You think Al Sharpton wants to defund the police? No, he doesn't. Al Sharpton is on board with them giving the police more money. Now, we already know police target Black communities, especially in New York where they have stop and frisk. And Eric Adams approves of stop and frisk. So he is calling on the mayor to make some efforts to take the crime down. A mayor who is a former police officer. What is Eric Adams' response going to be? Well, we already know because Joe Biden was in New York City talking about the crime rate in New York to Eric Adams, talking about giving the police more money. This is all they know how to do. This is why I think it was a mistake to have an ex-cop as a mayor. Don't be surprised if he escalates stop and frisk. Don't be surprised if more Black people get targeted because of this. This is just ridiculous. So Al Sharpton is one of those Black faces in high places, but is he really looking out for Black people? Or is it only when it's about voting? Is it only when it's about to get us to go out to the polls to vote to keep people like Joe Biden in office?
Come on, baby.
Go on. I'll say that, first, just the hamburger cover in the New York Post just makes me hungry. I've been up for a few hours now. Yeah. But I think this points to a larger issue, though. There is a sort of just sense that things just aren't quite right. The city's a little bit out of control. Crime is up in 72 of the 77 NYPD precincts.
But why is crime up? Why is crime up? So I've said this before multiple times on this show. Most crime is poverty driven. So if somebody is having to steal food, it is because they don't have the money to buy food. And you need food to live. That is a necessity. Not once do they mention that in that conversation. Not once do they bring up the poverty issue. Not once do they bring up capitalism. Oh, God forbid. You know they're not going to let them bring that up on that show, on that network. They didn't get to the root cause of the problem. Eric Adams isn't getting to the root cause of the problem. Why is the crime rate up? What happened 2 years ago? We entered the pandemic. New York City was one of the cities like mine in Boston that shut down. The restaurants, the businesses shut down. So after a period of time, some of those businesses had to close permanently because they couldn't afford to stay in business. They couldn't pay the property, the rent for the property. So they had to close. It happened here too. So now you have all these people who are now unemployed. This is another reason why I say they should have given monthly checks to everyone in the country. Not just this measly stimulus check. So you had a lot of businesses closed, a lot of people unemployed, couldn't pay their rent. You have people who were evicted. So now you want to know why the crime rate has increased. People don't have the money. People aren't making a living wage. People were barely making it. A lot of people, especially living in New York City, were probably making just enough to get by. And that is a dangerous thing. Because when you're making just enough to get by and something happens, which for us, it was the pandemic, now you're screwed. They kicked off a lot of people in September. They kicked them off of unemployment. I think they thought that would push people to go back to work. But in November, over 4 million Americans quit their jobs. Didn't work. And the problem is not because Americans are lazy. The problem is that we are not paying people a living wage in this country. And you want them to go back to these jobs that are paying them scraps, that don't want to give them paid leave. Some of them don't offer health insurance. And you have to work under the conditions of the pandemic. You want them to go back to that. Someone mentioned this earlier today. If you work 60 hours a week and you're making $10 an hour, you're still really not making enough to get by. And nobody should have to work 60 hours a week in the wealthiest country. But it happens. It's happening all over. So they never got to the root problem. I keep hearing Eric Adams and Joe Biden talk about the crime rate, the crime increase, but they're not addressing the poverty issue. And for people who feel we can only do things through electoral politics, I always bring up this example: poverty. The poverty problem in this country is not being solved through electoral politics. And I will continue to say that over and over and over again. It's not working. So we have to eradicate poverty in this country. We can do it. China's doing this. I think China's at 90%. We need to guarantee housing to everybody in this country. We have the money. We can do it. Cut that bloated military budget, the $768 billion that you gave to the military industrial complex, and give the American people a life. Most people are not sitting around wanting to be rich. Most people just want to have a life. They don't even want us to have that. So instead of shaming someone because they had to steal steaks or steal food from Trader Joe's, why don't you get to the root cause of the issue? Of course, the crime rate is going to increase when you have an increase in poverty. Of course, this is going to happen. This is why when you hear these talking points on mainstream media about these bad neighborhoods, they talk about the crime rate in Chicago, New York, and Baltimore. But a lot of times you don't see them pointed back to the poverty issue. Again, they're connected, they're related. But what was interesting to me is the way that they talked about this situation. And all those people that you saw on that screen are wealthy. They don't get it. They don't have to worry about these things. So what they're going to do is focus on how it inconveniences them instead of looking at, why are we having this problem? You rarely hear them talk about the poverty issue. You rarely do. Because then if you do that, it gets back to the living wage issue, which they don't really want to talk about that either. And then you have to address capitalism. And let's be clear, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, even though two of those networks are liberal and one is conservative, at the end of the day, neither one of them embrace socialism. Neither one of them want you to have socialism. Neither one of them wanted you to have someone like Bernie Sanders in office. The liberal media, the Democratic Party, is a neoliberal party. It is center-right. Those of us who are on the left, we're like way over here. The right's over here. The Democratic Party, I said the right was over here. The Democratic Party is closer to the right. At the end of the day, neither one of them really want to do anything for the people. I'm going to go to some of the comments in the chat. Echo J said Sharpton has used up any civil rights activist credit he may have had garnered 50 years ago. Very true. Shout out to Delthea Simmons for the super chat. You know what makes crime rates fall? A federal jobs guarantee with paid leave and a thriving wage. Well said. It's just, these are things that it's common sense. You don't have to have a degree to know this. This is common sense. And they know that. But they're not going to tell you that on their networks. Now, that conversation, what that will do for some people who only watch mainstream media, it will make them fearful. Oh my God, the crime rate is crazy. We need to give the police more money. See how that works? Because see, now you have an excuse to continue to fund the police state. Instead of putting that money into those neighborhoods and those communities, fix the poverty issue in those communities and the crime rate will decrease. You won't need as many police. You won't need to give the police a bloated budget. Fix the poverty issue, which they are not addressing. They don't want to deal with it. Because at the end of the day, and they may not say this out loud, but at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you a little secret. The wealthy people, and there are some who are the exception, but for the most part, one of the things I've seen in my life is a lot of times wealthy people, they want the poors to stay poor. They don't want them to come live next to them. They want them to stay in their community. They do not want the intersection. They want to protect their property and they want to protect capital, not so much protecting the people. And that's a shame. Joe OWS said a good book that covers this is a book called Rise of the Oath Breakers. It's about the police and other government workers who could care less about the oath that they have taken. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. Rise of the Oath Breakers. Pitchforks Are Coming said they refuse to accept socialism. They refuse to accept socialism will go a long way towards helping people in every way. This is true. A lot of times people hear socialism and they say, oh my God, I don't want to be like Venezuela. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about everybody who is a worker owning a piece of their work, which right now we currently don't. We don't. We're talking about everybody being able to have the place to live, to have food and housing. Like, these are necessities. Why is this even controversial? I just don't understand why this is even an issue. To me, it's common sense. Now, I told you that tweet did not go over well for Al Sharpton. Didn't work out the way he thought it would, and someone had something to say. Now, you've heard me talk about her on this show before. Her name is Nicole Hannah-Jones. She is known for refusing tenure. She was refused tenure offer at the University of North Carolina. And her story went public, and she threatened to sue them. And after that, then they tried to come back to her and say, we want to offer you tenure now. And she said no, and I don't blame her. Look what she had to do to try to get it. Now, I want to share my screen. I want to show you what she had to say to Al Sharpton. This is a call out if I have never seen one. So here we go. Nicole Hannah-Jones said, the drum beat for continued mass incarceration is really horrific to watch. A person stealing steak is not national news, and there have always been thefts from stores. Let me say that part again. There have always been thefts from stores. This is how you legitimize the carceral rate. The carceral state. That was her responding to Al Sharpton. I told you, he posted this himself. And like I said, I don't think he thought this was going to do what it did. Look at the responses. Public safety, ? This is from Liberal Larry. Reverend Al, what would Jesus say about a person stealing food in the richest country in the world? And how is this newsworthy as opposed to, say, the dire need for affordable housing, unaffordable healthcare versus similar countries, corporations busting unions? Enoch Brown called him a coon. See the raccoons? This did not go out well. Now, Tonal Recall said this, Al, the U.S. wealth inequality is high and is rising. Everyone look at this. Take a good look at this picture here. Let me make it bigger for you so you can see the numbers. Oh, that's as big as it goes. Balls. All right. The top 1% of U.S. households by income have almost as matched wealth today as the bottom 80%. As measured in trillions of dollars between 1989 and 2019. Look at this chart, you guys. Do you see the steady increase? Look at this. This is insane. This is insane. Top 1% by income is the orange line here. 0 to 80% by income is the blue line. This is the wealth inequality. If you go back to 1989, you see the difference back then? That's all the way over here. And now all the way over here in 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, capitalism is not working. People keep trying to put these guardrails on capitalism. It does not work. This is one of the reasons why we have these high wealth inequalities in this country. People want to save it. Why? We have billionaires. Top 1% crushing the rest of us. How is that even possible? How did this happen? Capitalism. Now, the reason why I say you can't have guardrails on capitalism is because the people at the bottom are always exploited. This is how it always works. The people at the top get rich. The people at the bottom stay poor, but they make just enough to be able to get by a lot of times. And as long as they can show that they're making just enough to get by, a lot of times people just shrug. This is insane. With as much money that Jeff Bezos has, Amazon workers shouldn't even have had to fight for $15 an hour. Do you get my point? As much money as the Waltons have, why were they even paying people at Walmart minimum wage? It's so disgusting. So disgusting. Janice said stores have insurance for shrinkage, so the loss is a wash. So Al Sharpton, he's another one, man. He's another one. He still wants to keep capitalism in place. He's not going to go for what the left wants. Like, he's not going to go for socialism. I don't know why I can't talk tonight. He is there, like Dr. Cornel West said, black faces in high places. That's it. That's the one they can point to and say representation. And like Echo J said, I know he's done a lot for civil rights, but the stuff that he's done in this decade, it kind of just washes it. It's kind of a wash. And that's unfortunate. I'm going to move into this Dave Chappelle story because this got a lot of responses from people on Twitter. I want to go ahead and forewarn you before I play the video. If you just go by this video and you run with it, it's easy to assume that this was just about one thing, but it's actually not just about one thing. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I did a little bit of research because something about this story to me just seemed a little odd. So again, the theme of tonight's show is the class issue. All of these stories involve class. So this is the thread that went around on Twitter the other day. Dave Chappelle personally came to a city council meeting and threatened to remove his $65 million of investments from his city if they allowed a developer to move forward with an affordable housing program. The objection wasn't to the build, but the affordable housing component. Now, I'm going to play this video really quick first, and then I'm going to show you what I found after doing a little bit more research. So let me go down here. So this is a town meeting at Yellow Springs, Ohio. By the way, I had never heard of Yellow Springs, Ohio until this story came out. So I did some Googling because I was like, what is a Yellow Springs? But yeah, this is one of those town meetings and Dave Chappelle is here. I don't know if you guys know, but Dave Chappelle does live in a town in Ohio. And he decides to speak up at this meeting. So here we go.
Can I go? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Dave Chappelle. I just want to say, and Marianne, I can talk to you about this privately. I don't know why the village council would be afraid of litigation from a $24 million a year company while they X out the $65 million a year company. I cannot believe you would make me audition for you. You look like clowns. I am not bluffing. I will take it all off the table. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So
I'm gonna play this one more time.
No. Can you hear me?
yes. Yes.
Hi, I'm Dave Chappelle. I just want to say, and Marianne, I can talk to you about this privately. I don't know why the village council would be afraid of litigation from a $24 million a year company while they X out the $65 million a year company. I cannot believe you would make me audition for you. You look like clowns. I am not bluffing. I will take it all off the table. That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
Whoops, I was muted. Here's the problem. Most people saw that video and ran with it. Didn't look into the story, didn't seek out any extra information, and it's easy to fall for it. I mean, honestly, when I first saw the video, my response was, I don't understand. I'm still muted. Am I still muted? Hold on. Okay, no, I'm not still muted. So when I first saw it, the first thing I said was, why would Dave Chappelle be against an affordable housing project? Dave Chappelle grew up poor. He knows what it's like to be poor. Why would he be against that? So that was the question that I had. And that's why I decided to dig a little bit deeper. Unfortunately, by the time I found the information that I was looking for, people had already ran with this story. It's all over Twitter. And now I feel like I'm a little bit late coming out with this extra information. And now people are just like, they're not going to want to hear that the reason for this. Like people, or they're not going to believe it because certain people took the story and ran with it immediately before doing more research. So I want to show you something that I found. I was curious about Yellow Springs, Ohio, because like I said, I've never heard of this place. So I wanted to see what type of town this was. So I did a little check here. I wanted to see what was the average income in Yellow Springs, Ohio. So let me share my screen. And this is when I knew something wasn't right. So here we go. So the average income in Yellow Springs, Ohio, it says it's a village in Ohio. Now, this was 2019. That was the latest I could find. $33,071. Though I thought to myself, well, that's odd. That's not a high income. So if that's the average income of people living in Yellow Springs, and also keep in mind that Dave Chappelle lives there too, right? So Dave Chappelle's a millionaire. So that probably increased this amount even more. Just saying. Why would people in a town that has an average income of $33,000 roughly not want an affordable housing building in their village? That just didn't seem right. So then I decided to do a little bit more digging. By the way, hit that like button, guys. That really helps me with the algorithm. And I said, let me wait and see if more information comes out before I talk about this story. Some people didn't do that. Some people ran with this, and now it is a mess. And so I did. I waited, and Dave Chappelle did respond. So let me go ahead and share what he had to say about this project and why he said what he said. I'm going to make this a little bit larger. There's multiple articles on this, by the way. All right. Dave Chappelle, who became the target of criticism this week after speaking against. What happened here? Okay. Dave Chappelle, after becoming the target of criticism this week after speaking against the development in Yellow Springs, said in a statement that the plan was not the right fit for the village. Dave Chappelle didn't kill affordable housing. Concerned residents and a responding village council killed a half-baked plan which never actually offered affordable housing. I'm going to say that again. They killed a half-baked plan which never actually offered affordable housing. Now that's coming from Carla Sims, who's a spokesperson for Chappelle. Chappelle was among several residents who spoke against the project at a council meeting Monday. The comedian, who announced last year that he was buying a former fire station in Yellow Springs with plans to turn it into a comedy club, said he would back out if the project was allowed. I'm not bluffing. I will take it all off the table. The council sided with Chappelle and other residents opposing the project, which would have been expanded to include duplexes, townhomes, and less than 2 acres for future affordable housing. Instead, the project will now go forward with just single-family homes. Chappelle lives with his family outside the village and has ties that go back to when his father graduated from Antioch College in Yellow Springs and later was a professor there. Neither Dave nor his neighbors are against affordable housing. However, they are against the poorly vetted cookie cutter sprawl type development deal, which has little regard for the community, culture, and infrastructure of the village. Let me come out. Now, hopefully, that adds a little bit more context to that story. You see why it's not good just to take a clip and run with it? You see what I mean? Where Pilgrim said he didn't grow up poor, that's true, more middle class. I think he had two different sets, because I know at one point he said he grew up in DC. I think he might have been poor when he lived in DC and then he moved. I forget. I have to go back and look, but that was really interesting to find out. Now, there's something else that I do want to show you, because I said again, like when you just run with stories. Let me share my screen. Okay, now watch this. This is the same tweet that went out with that video. Most people stopped right here and they didn't read the thread. So they shared this part of the story, which includes the video, but they didn't share this part. Let me scroll down. I dug into it just to make certain, but the developer was explicitly putting land aside for affordable housing without even plans for it yet. See, most people didn't tweet this part. 140 house plan in Yellow Springs takes another step forward. That's the news article. They go down and they say the specific issue was zoning for high density housing. The problem is Yellow Springs is a well-off suburb of Dayton, and no one wants an excess of cheaper housing supply nearby purely on property values alone. Now, even this isn't 100% true, because I just showed you what the average income was. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, the specific issue was zoning for high density housing. The problem is Yellow Springs is a well-off suburb. But I just showed you the average income, you guys. So this is why you can't just take a story off Twitter and just run with it. This is why it's good to do more research. Scrolling down, They said the cynical part of me would assume the land itself was never going to be developed, but remained zoned for denser living to increase resale value or to be turned into a bougie park later on. But even the possibility it would have been used appropriately is worth trying. Again, there's no source. There's no source to an article. So then they came down here and they said, this is already blowing up. I'm muting it. You see what happened? So then I decided to see, now this part, this didn't make any sense to me. Listen to this, you guys. The proposal the council voted on Monday night would have included 64 single-family homes, 52 duplexes, and 24 townhomes with an additional 1.75 acres to be donated to the community for affordable housing to be built later, according to Dayton Daily News. After the council deadlocked on the proposal, the zoning allegedly reverted to what was previously approved. 143 single-family homes on the lot, with homes starting at about $300,000. Now, I am no rocket scientist here. I'm not the best with math. It was never my favorite subject. But does $300,000 sound like affordable housing to you? In Ohio? A $300,000 home. That doesn't sound like affordable housing to me. In Ohio. I know people that live in Ohio that didn't pay anywhere near that for their homes. And they don't live in affordable housing. $300,000. So it sounds like to me, based on what I've gathered, Lateef said, man, hell no. No, that doesn't sound like affordable housing. What if that's affordable? What are the prices of the other houses that are not a part of affordable housing? I'm so sorry. Craig said 300K isn't affordable if 30K is the median income. Thank you. So it sounds like to me that this plan it sounds sketchy. It sounds sketch. It didn't seem like they really had it all together. So anyway, like I said, people took this first part of this thread and they just ran with that video. And Dave Chappelle has responded and said he's not opposed to affordable housing. It was something about this particular project that was not okay, that was not kosher. $300,000 for affordable housing? No, I'll take those comments on Rockfin, Eric. That doesn't sound right. That does not sound right. Oh, shout out to Dorothea Simmons for being a Sabby member for 7 months. She said a lie makes it halfway around the world. Uh-oh, what happened? Oh, a lie makes it halfway around the world in the time it takes the truth to get its boots on. Running with stuff on the internet is often running with a lie. You have to dig a little bit deeper, you guys. You have to dig a little bit. And there could be even more information. But like I said, something about this just seemed a little off to me. It just seemed a little off. I'm going to go to this comment here. Elvin Brown says it was for gentrification. Bingo. As soon as I heard cookie cutter houses, I was like, oh, that sounds like gentrification. So if that was the case, now I see why they said no. Look, people got to stand up and fight back and push back against having their neighborhoods be like gentrified. And luckily they had the voices there and the numbers there to do it. But I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired of seeing these cookie cutter condo buildings. They all look the same. These box units just sprouting up everywhere. Like I said, pretty soon, 10, 15 years from now, all these cities are going to look the same. The character and the culture is gone. Okay. Thanks for the tip on Rockfin Roger. Understand Sharpton is an acolyte of Jesse, who in 1984 stepped in on behest of Black workers racially discriminated at Pepsi. Jesse came in to help out with a payday got JR a job, with them leaving black workers empty-handed. Sharpton is known for doing the Sharpton Shakedown as hush money for NAN when black workers at corporate face discrimination. Has you focused on civil/voting rights, cops? Oh, okay. Oh, hi, Rory. Rory says, doo-doo. Thanks again for this tip. Also, Roger, yet silent on white collar racial discrimination in corporate America because he depends on them to keep afloat. Tamika Mallory, an acolyte of Sharpton, who went from BLM and Women's March to doing Cadillac commercials. John said it was 55 acres of regulatory housing and 2 acres for later build of affordable. A tax write-off for 2 acres. Thank you so much, John and Roger. So there you go. So hopefully everyone learns a lesson from this, from just running with these little clips. Told you, when you see these little clips, there's usually something else that goes along with it that has been removed, right? So it's always good to go back and try to see if you can find that extra information. So hopefully people learn something from this, from just taking a clip on Twitter and being like, this is what happened. So yeah, like I said, I thought there was something off about this story. I'm sorry, I missed your comment, Monarch. Here we go. But not even Dave Chappelle needed to mention Ukraine to get his point across. That's the comparison I was making between what Chappelle said and what Katie Halper added on. Interesting. Robert said, Al Sharpton doesn't care what you think or what I think. He's just making money every day off the misery of Black Americans. Bingo. All right. I forgot to tell you guys what I'm drinking tonight, and then I'm going to go into the third story. Tonight I have, this is called London Calling. It's a chocolate porter, 5.5 ABV, and this is by Lamplighter Brewing. This is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I actually used to live on the street where this brewery is. So yeah, after I moved, of course they put a brewery there. But it's pretty good so far, by Lamplighter Brewing Company. Boo-doo. I don't know if I'm putting this in the camera way or not, but yeah, that's what I'm drinking tonight. Third story. Here we goes. So, sticking with the theme of tonight's show, which is class, now we're going to go into this story with Russell Brand and Matt Taibbi. And this situation, they're talking about the class issue in the media space. And that's something like we talk about on RBN multiple times. In fact, we were just talking about that the other day on RBN. So I want you to hear what they have to say. This is really interesting. I think anyone who's worked in media is going to have some type of connection to this. So let me go ahead and get this geared up for you. And again, some people misunderstood what Matt Taibbi was talking about in this video too. So it's just, this is why it's good to go to the full clip. So here we go. So this is Russell Brand and Matt Taibbi, and they're talking about the class issue in the media space.
A lot of stuff there. One is like, is there just is it the professional class of people don't like sort of when it, sort of working class people? And in the countries we're talking about, the majority of those working people are still like white. You can probably, you can sort of say really just in pure numbers. Is that a significant thing? Has there always been a kind of antipathy? And then perhaps as it's come up, do you think that these divisive issues that have been exacerbated by COVID, Brexit, Trump being just a couple of examples, have somehow legitimized pre-existing cultural tensions that were always there and just waiting to be somehow realized?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a ton of this has to do with class and sort of natural class antipathy. I mean, just in my business, when my father was coming up in journalism in the 60s and 70s, journalists were not upper class people. It was more like a trade than a profession.
Yeah.
The people who worked in newspapers, they were more like the sons and daughters of plumbers and electricians than they they were never Ivy League educated, rich people. And then, a lot of things happened, including like the movie All the President's Men, and it became like a sexy profession for upper class people to go into. But by the time I went into journalism, it was all people like me. It was upper class kids who had gone to good schools and whose attraction to the job was being close to figures in power. They wanted to be kind of behind the rope line. They wanted to have a beer.
Yeah, this is true. So I'm glad this conversation came up because, again, I feel like we were talking about this a lot over at RBN, but it is true in media space. Like a lot of times today, a lot of the journalists that you see, they come from wealthy families. I'll give you a couple examples. I was just talking about this over at RBN earlier. Ryan Grimm. Ryan Grimm is wealthy. Like what they're making today, it's nothing like how it used to be. Like some of these people are making millions of dollars, right? So you have people like Ryan Grimm, you have people like Emma Vigilant. By the way, she criticized this this video and she completely got this video wrong. I'll show you that after the vid. But these people, like they're coming from these wealthy like families, and it's just not what it used to be. And let's be real, like if you're starting out in journalism, I know at least for me, I studied broadcast journalism in college and undergrad. Even during those internships and when you were starting out, like I was meeting people who were TV station producers. Some of them were making $20,000, $30,000 a year. Like I was in the South, I should say that. If you really wanted to get the bigger roles, you really had to move to the bigger cities. And they're going to get into that in just a second. But he's 100% right here. Like it's totally changed. It's just a lot of this space now is occupied by people who are wealthy, and people who are wealthy tend to have connections. And if you have those connections, it's easier for you to get those jobs in those media spaces like the Today Show or Good Morning America. It's easier for you to get those roles. So people who are coming from families that are often, poor or, working class, they're going to a lot of times have to start at the very bottom, and it's going to be harder for them to move up. They're going to have to move up based on their work alone, unless they can form those relationships while they're in the business. But right out the gate, nah. I'm going to go back in.
With Hillary Clinton's aide at night, that was sort of their ambition in life, was to socially hang out with all these people. And they did not have a connection to the ordinary working class person, which journalists once did because they were those people. Like that's where they came from.
Yeah.
And so I saw this very graphically in 2016. I covered Trump's campaign, and we would be going, from place to place. And if you've ever been to a campaign event, the press is usually on a riser in the middle of the hall, and they're kind of roped off, and they look like zoo animals. They're on display in this really uncomfortable way. And everybody inside the press section looks like an upper class nerd. They wear the same smart glasses. They wear the same, corny Urban Outfitters outfits, right? And Trump picked up early in the campaign on the fact that the people in the hall did not like the people on the riser. And he started to, like a comedian, he started to feel out the crowd a little bit. And he would say things like, look at those bloodsuckers, they hate me, they hate you. They want nothing more than for me to lose, blah, blah, blah. And people would turn toward us, they throw stuff at us. And a lot of the people inside the press section couldn't handle it and didn't understand it. And I was saying, what about this doesn't make sense? Of course they hate us. They see us as people who write about them as hicks and losers and idiots and who are not on their side. And why wouldn't they hate us, right? And this is the fundamental cultural divide in America. It's between upper class, college educated, mostly cosmopolitan city people, and kind of everybody else. And there's the media class in particular it has no idea what people in red states or out there think like, or what they're like, what they care about, what their lives are like, what working 3 jobs to support kids without health insurance, like they just don't know.
This is spot on. So I want to talk about this for a second. This is 100% true. Having lived in red states and blue states, I know that when I was looking for like those journalist jobs, most of those jobs were concentrated in the blue cities. It was Boston, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago. So a lot of times if you were going into those fields and you wanted those jobs, you really kind of needed to be in those areas to really get the opportunities, right? Matt's right here. Like a lot of times I can tell you, living here, I live in the Boston area, Massachusetts. There's a lot of elitism. Boston used to be a working class city. I wouldn't call it that today. It's become more of a professional city thanks to the tech industry and the startups that have come here. And so there's a lot of elitism sometimes and classism. And if you have not lived in those red states, in those rural areas, I've noticed like they don't really understand the needs of people that live in those environments, and they see them in such a negative way. They assume that if they're, especially if you're down south, they assume that, oh, if you're from South Carolina or Georgia, that you don't know any better or you're not smart, you're not educated. They make a lot of assumptions. And it's unfortunate because they're not living in those areas where they get to actually interact with those people on a daily basis. So they have these assumptions, and a lot of times these assumptions aren't even true. So I'll give you an example. I've lived in South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia. So I've lived in red states. And I, for one, and Nick talks about this on RBN as well. I, for one, can tell you, when I tell you that you have to learn how to work with people on the right, or people on the right, sometimes to get issues passed and to get things done. When I lived in a red state, guys, I had to work with people on the right. When you live in a place like South Carolina, like it's a red state, I had to work with people that didn't agree with me on everything. I couldn't just work with people on the left because we were a small part of that bubble, a very small part. So I learned how to work with people that are conservative. And when people make these statements that like, well, you shouldn't work with people on the right because then you're part of a red brown alliance, which I think is ridiculous, by the way. And it's a CIA talking point, and I think people need to stop. Oftentimes those messages are coming from that class of people that Matt was just talking about, those liberal elites who have grown up in those blue cities from those wealthy families. They don't understand that. They don't get it, that those of us that have lived in those red states, when you have a majority that are conservative, I can't go throughout my life and not interact with them. That's not how it works. And I think when you're in a blue bubble, you're in these like little blue coastal elite enclaves, it's easier to do that. Like here in Boston, it's easier for me to not really interact with someone who's conservative if I wish, because I'm in a blue area. A lot of people here are the blue for the most part. There's red pockets, but for the most part, they're blue. But not everybody has that opportunity. If you are in those red states, you have to learn how to work with people who may be conservative. But Matt is right in reference to the media space. This is very prominent. Look around. Who do you see? We were talking about this the other day on RBN. The TYT crowd. Emma Vigilant. These people don't, Sam Cedar. Like, they don't interact with those people, and they make assumptions about them, and they don't really understand the needs and the wants of those communities. And if you're going to say you're not going to talk to those people or you're not going to interact with them just because they're a conservative and you're not, you're missing out on a lot of opportunity, because some of the issues that we want, that we fight for in this country, you'd be surprised how many conservatives I've talked to who actually feel like we should have some of those issues as well. But you can't find that out if you refuse to talk to them and try to work with them in any way, shape, or form. Now, I'll say this earlier and I'll say it again. Politicians do this all the time. And when they do it, it's called bipartisanship. But when we try to do it, regular, everyday people in the community, we're called a red-brown alliance. I'm going to go back into the video.
So there's this natural tendency to have all kinds of fantasies about what those people are like, and they're often wrong.
Oh, that's a really cool story. And it's difficult, Matt, to not want to ask you a little more, because I'm reminded of that beautiful Rolling Stone article by the late, great Foster Wallace, when he talks, when he's embedded there in the campaign trail with, what's your man, McCann, and he talks about the strata of the sort of surrounding caravan, and and how it's sort of he's hanging out with the techies that are with the film crews, and how he gets a better impression of how stuff's really going down than with the more sort of the policy wonk dudes that are a little bit closer, even though some of them are described as pretty cool, and like the legacy media people that hang in. It's a beautiful, beautiful, it's one of my favorite bits of his writing. Obviously, I've not read the novels, too hard. Just the journalism.
They're too big. They're good as doorstops, actually.
Yeah. Christ. But when you were sort of in that situation and following Trump, in retrospect, I was doing videos when Trump was campaigning, this guy, he's a joke. This is ridiculous. So I was even though I really sort of try to wear my heart on my sleeve when it comes to, hey, listen, I'm from a normal background. I'm from the sort of UK equivalent of New Jersey, Essex. I'm from a normal background in spite of all the fancy looking stuff. And I was, dead wrong about the impact that dude was having. And the instinct that he had to sort of start, attacking and criticizing, as you say, the roped off press and media. What, can you perhaps unpack for us how you think that fissure has subsequently affected America? And tell me about the phenomenon of Trump and what instincts you think he had at play, and how he's made the impact he had, how he's sort of somehow mobilized a populist movement that, loads of us would disagree with, but would have to, at least recognize that he is addressing a neglected and significant demographic.
One of the first times I saw Trump was in a place called Plymouth, New Hampshire, and he was giving a speech, and I had been primed to expect that his whole thing was going to be about immigrants and was going to be full of this sort of racist demagoguery, and there was a little bit of that in there, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the speech was very clever. He said something. He had just been in a debate where there was a pharmaceutical lobbyist. Well, actually, Jeb Bush, his campaign manager, his financial director was Woody Johnson, who is the CEO of Johnson & Johnson, the pharmaceutical company. And he had been in the crowd during the debate, if I remember correctly. But Trump said to the crowd, he says, "You think Jeb Bush is going to lower your pharmaceutical prices? Of course not. He's got a pharmaceutical CEO running his campaign. Of course he's not the guy." And then he says, "Jeb Bush is no different from Hillary Clinton. They're bought by the same people. They're funded by the same people." And I'm listening to this, and I'm looking around at the crowd, and I'm seeing that they're completely glued to what he was saying. I mean, you've probably you see this with performers. Some people have a sense for how to grab the room, and some people just don't, right? And he really did. And I thought to myself, this is going to work. And I remember I wrote this piece saying, Trump is onto something. He's clicking with people with messages that basically the system is not designed to address their problems, because there really is kind of a conspiracy of powerful interests at the top that runs both parties, and he's grabbed that message and he's running with it. No one else is gonna touch it, except Bernie Sanders, who is being suppressed by his own party, right? So later on, I was sort of talked out of the idea that he was going to win by some Democratic pollster, and that was a huge mistake in my journalism career. But I think what Trump did that was unique was that he listened. Essentially, I mean, he could see that there was this tremendous amount of anger out there. He connected with ordinary people because he has the same tastes that a lot of ordinary people do. A lot of people think of Trump as that's what I would do if I had $1 billion, that's the house that I would live in. So yeah, no, I think he just listened. He just did a simple thing. He listened, and he clued into the basic stupidity of the political system, and he had the balls to call it out. And at that point, it's not hard. You get into, you talked about the animal energy with which he dismissed Jeb Bush in a debate. like once you have that central truth, all these characters like Marco Rubio and and Bush and Ted Cruz, they become just easy to dispense with.
Yeah, well said. That was the one thing I will say about Trump that I think that like Hillary's campaign was not ready for, was the fact that he just basically went out there and talked to the everyday people, something Hillary Clinton didn't want to do. In fact, she called them deplorables. That's that elite coastal thinking I told you guys, but that's an interesting conversation. You can definitely check out the rest of it on YouTube. I want to get to some of the comments here. Oh no, I want to show you this tweet because Emma Vigilance saw a clip from that video and responded to it on Twitter, and she totally got this wrong. Like, so Emma Vigilance said, here's the video here, which I just played this clip for you, but I played a longer version of it. And so Matt Taibbi was saying, this is from Matthew Dimitri, but Matt Taibbi was saying the media class has no idea what people in red states think and like, or what they care about, what their lives are like. You just heard him talk about that, right? She retweeted this and said, making the red state distinction is odd until you realize that it's meant to appeal to right-wing white victimhood. The so-called media class has little understanding of the working class, which includes non-white workers in cities. Class solidarity isn't the agenda here. You guys see what I'm talking about when I say people just take stuff and run with it? I need to make it bigger. Sorry. So there's the tweet there. Making the red state distinction is odd until you realize that it's meant to appeal to right-wing white victimhood. The so-called media class has little understanding of the working class, which includes non-white workers in cities. Class solidarity isn't the agenda here. And I retweeted that. And I said, yeah. A lot of media jobs are in blue states. You totally misunderstood this. What can I say, ladies and gentlemen? What can I say? This is what I was saying about those little clips that people just, she really just don't get it. She just don't get it. I'm sorry. But Matt Taibbi, he admitted in the video that he came up from wealthy class. I believe he went to school in Concord, Massachusetts, and Concord is a wealthy town here for those who don't know. There's a lot of history in Concord, like the Walden Ponds over there somewhere. I don't remember everything, but Walden Ponds over there. But it's expensive town. Like you have to be wealthy to live there. So he's like talking about it like from his experience, And yeah, and World Pilgrim's right. Emma's in New York. Yes. And her family's wealthy. I told you, when it comes to the class issue, they don't want to touch that. They don't want to get on that because they know that we're talking about them. When we start talking about the class issue, they know that means we're pointing fingers at them because they're a part of that class and they do the same thing. I want to get to some of these comments. Sabs, I was referencing Jimmy Dore's live video today when he covered Dave Chappelle. Jimmy pulled up a video of Katie Halper on Rising, clearing up the Dave Chappelle smears. I didn't even get a notification for Jimmy going live today. What time did he go live? I have no notification for it. I'll have to check it out when it posts. Yasmin said, I'm late. Hey, everybody. Sabby, that drink sounds delicious. Thank you. Marcel said, Sabby, liberals and conservatives are united on the important issues. No Medicare for all, no raising the minimum wage, unlimited war, more cops, no free college. Yeah, I'm not liberal. So I don't know. I don't know where that's coming from. What I was talking about in reference to talking to people who are also conservatives is that what I found, I put that there. What I found is that even people who are conservative, and this was back when Bernie was running, I asked them about healthcare. Like, do you think everybody should have healthcare in this country? That's the big one. That's the big one. Because people on the right need healthcare too. And I was surprised to see how many people that were conservative said yes, they agreed that we should have Medicare for all. Remember, it wasn't just people on the left. When you look at the polls, it wasn't just people on the left that agreed that we should have Medicare for all. Some of those numbers came from people on the right as well. So That's why I say you got to come together on some of the issues. You got to find common ground. But if you don't talk to them, you won't know. Sean said, ever notice that every time they label a group racist, that they are almost always blue collar? That is true. That is true. I've noticed that. Karen said the housing started at 250 and 600,000, zero affordable housing, zero. Dave is the hero in the scenario. Yeah, we went over that, Karen. Yep, we went through all of that. So again, let this be an example for everyone, not to just take a clip and just run with it and not do a little bit of research. But you have me here, so you actually don't have to do any of the research. I'll take those comments on Rockfin. Where did it? Okay. Response number 2 from last Monday's show, AOC versus Fox, socialism versus capitalism. I'm thinking making the argument of capitalism versus socialism is the wrong argument to have and puts us at a disadvantage, only because most people don't have a full comprehensive definition of what both are, and therefore they both, especially with socialism, are subject to the worst parts of people's imagination, leading those who benefit from the system the way it is to have the living daylight scared out of them because they don't fully understand what socialism is. But even those who don't fully benefit from the system or at all, but are afraid of change, seeing that predictability has its own security despite that it is not working for you. I think a more specific, precise, targeted way of winning those who don't know is to speak of corporate versus cooperative, ballot initiatives versus elected politicians, public/postal banking over Wall Street fleecing. This gives you the opportunity to explain what each and every one of them are. I would never tell a libertarian that public banking is socialist banking, although that is what it is, but explain that it doesn't need to raise taxes to finance the government, balance budgets, and create surpluses. I explain it to them like that. You find they love it. North Dakota, the only state with a public bank, and that ain't no progressive socialist bastion. Ever notice how those against socialism can't accept programs like Social Security is socialism, or their parents being on Medicare, our infrastructure as well? Duffy said the ability to disseminate power, to make decisions for themselves. He just said it without saying it, a worker co-op. The ability for the people to make decisions for themselves. Sabby, I'm telling you, I can sell even these guys on worker co-ops without having to speak about socialism. Gen X, last generation, over 58% favorable view on capitalism because we were the last generation to remember a worker-friendly economy with the last 2 years of the Clinton presidency. Just watched the limited series Valley of the Boom, where it talked about boom before the .com bust of May of 2000. So some of us still have memories. That woman said history hasn't been taught. Your rights, socialism and communism have been, since the McCarthy era, been kept out of being taught in college. Just ask Professor Wolf. He was there during that time. That woman said Gen X is just going to work and not make any noise. We're not making a lot of money either. Also, yes, I grew up watching his dad in the 80s, CBS News with Mike Taibbi. Yep. Yeah, so even like Matt Taibbi, like he had connections. That's what I was saying. That's what it's like sometimes in this space. I was going to another comment here. Thanks so much for the super chat, ABC. Yeah. I wonder if media and urban elites have ever visited red states. I'm not from one, but have spent time in them. And now I understand and respect the point of view. Sometimes they have to visit those states for a story, but I think it's a lot different when you visit a place and when you actually live there. Like I visited Boston like years before I moved to Boston, but what I saw as a visitor and what I saw like living here were two different things. But that's a good question. All right. I am going to have, I got like 11 minutes and I'm going to have patrons come on. But before that, I do want to go ahead and make sure I shout out this. This is incredibly important. There is a direct action event that is happening next week. You guys know I love to shout these out. If you can make it, definitely try to be there. A lot of people do not know about this story, so I want to make you aware of what's going on. So next week, February 16th, right here in Boston, Massachusetts, there is a rally, Free Alex Saab. The Venezuelan diplomat Alex Saab was trying to buy humanitarian supplies in legal international trade, bypassing illegal U.S. sanctions. Saab has been kidnapped, tortured, and extradited to the U.S., facing fabricated charges. Saab was trying to bring food, medicine, and fuel to Venezuela. The case raises a dangerous precedent in terms of extraterritorial judicial abuse, violation of diplomatic status, and even the use of torture to extract false confessions. That rally is happening next week. The rally is on February 16th at 2 p.m. This is going to be at the Boston Common, right next to Park Street Station. So those of you who are familiar with the area, you know where Park Street Station is located on the Boston Common. So that's off of Boylston Street. Is that Boylston or Tremont? I think that's Boylston. Anyway, you guys, you'll see where Park Street Station is. It's kind of big. You can't miss it. But Free Alex Saab. So definitely share this information, you guys, with as many people as you can to get the word out. I'm also going to share this on Twitter as well, to let people know about this event that's coming up. Because again, I think like if you can make it, like I have a work, that's during work time for me, so I won't be able to make it. But if you can make it, definitely get out there to the Boston Common and go to that event. Now, I have been doing this thing for Black History Month where I am giving a spotlight to an African American, mainly people from history. And this one was actually recommended to me by Leroy. Actually sent this one to me, and I did not know about this individual. So we're learning together here, guys. We're learning together. Let me go ahead and put this up and then put this in here. So give me just a second. All right. So tonight, let me grab my picture. I was not familiar with this person. I was embarrassed that I was not familiar with them, to be honest with you. Leroy, thank you so much for shouting this out to me, because some of you have sent me suggestions and I appreciate that, for those of you who have done that. So I'm sharing my screen. So tonight's spotlight is PBS Pinchback. So I'm trying to mention people that are not as well known. So like, I'm not going to mention MLK. Everybody knows who that is. Like, I don't need to tell you this story. But who is this individual? PBS Pinchback. He was an American publisher, politician, and Union Army officer. He was the first African American to serve as governor of U.S. state and the second African American to serve as lieutenant governor of a U.S. state. He was a Republican. He served as acting governor of Louisiana from December 9th, 1872 to July 13th, 1873. He was one of the most prominent African-American office holders during the Reconstruction era. So, here you go. PBS Pinchback. He was the first African-American to serve as U.S. governor. You learn something new every day. You can send that over to your friends as well. All right. Okay. I started this new thing where people who are certain level of patrons can sign up to come on the show and do a Q&A session with me. So I've allotted time for that. I see one of them is already here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And Daniel, you know, I know you're coming on at 9:30. We got 6 minutes till 9:30. So just hop on when you come through. But I'm going to go ahead and add them. So Eric, do you want me to add you too? Yep. Okay. Cool. Let me go ahead.
Hello, and Corey, you can unmute yourself. There you go.
Corey, coming to you from Boston tonight. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for coming on, Corey. I like that intro you gave yourself.
Yeah. If it's okay with you, I wanted to talk a little bit about crime and crime statistics and how it relates to class. Because I actually have a background in criminal justice, and I'm definitely coming at it from a critical standpoint. That's what I went to school for, and kind of did that professionally, and had a lot of issues with that. And so don't do that. But we really need to be skeptical of any kind of sensational reporting about crime statistics, and especially rises in that, because that's going to be used just to stratify people and basically take people that, maybe you're in the middle class and you're taking a look at another middle class person and they're getting labeled as a criminal. And that's just going to be, class warfare. And that's something that the media is going to put out there to twist people. On a federal level, basically crime statistics come from two places. The FBI, which is the Uniform Crime Report, that's where police departments report to the FBI. I think we have enough reason to be skeptical of what they're going to be reporting. And the other one is the Bureau of Justice Statistics, which is also federal. And they do the National Crime Victimization Survey, which basically is random Americans get these surveys and say, hey, within the past year, were you a victim of a crime? What crime this is also. That's not going to be 100% accurate. So I guess I just say, like, be skeptical about it. I do think that it's something we can consider, but we do need to be skeptical of that. For the Uniform Crime Report, one of the things that I think is definitely
So you mean kind of like when they're saying, crime's going up, right?
Yeah. So these numbers, they're not reliable. So the UCR, the Uniform Crime Report, the FBI, that's what the police report. There's different categories. One of them is use of force. So basically, the FBI themselves in 2019, they said that only 41% of police departments in the entire country reported on use of force. So if you have 59% of police departments not reporting on that part of the UCR, and the FBI says that themselves in 2019, like, how can we believe anything that they're going to potentially put out?
Wow. I was not aware of that. That's interesting. That is interesting. Welcome, Daniel. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hold on. Let me just lower my okay, hold on. Sorry, I'm just trying to. No, I have the YouTube in the background, so let me try to shut that down first and shut the sound off, so we don't get an echo.
Okay. I'll do the Roger comment while you're setting that up. You can put that up, Eric.
Let me figure out how to get it big. There we go.
Okay. Thanks so much for the tip on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. The media only visits those states during presidential elections. Unlike GC of Status Quo, who actually does the work. Please donate to him so he can do a full report when he visits Libby, Montana, to see how they like their Medicare for all.
Short.
Since he has been over a decade since they've had it, we need him to stay there to get to know the people like he did with Flint. If positive outcome, this can be a huge Medicare for all movement. That's true. Yeah, I forgot to mention that to you guys. I know Jordan Sheraton is trying to go to Libby, Montana to cover their situation with Medicare for all. So yeah, definitely check it out. Like, Jordan does a lot of work on the ground. So if you don't watch Status Quo, definitely check it out.
Jordan Sheridan, he did that report that's the only state in the United States that has Medicare for all. Is that correct?
Yep, it's the only one. It's the only town. I think it's just that town that has it, not the whole state.
Yeah, which is sickening. Ugh, my God. And it was only because he said it was because of the, if I'm not mistaken, he showed a clip that said it was about the asbestos, correct?
I think so. Yeah, they had like, I guess you would call a health emergency. And that was the reason why they were able to advocate for it, which is the same thing that, like, Joe Biden could have done for all of us during the pandemic. Because of the pandemic, we could have done the same thing.
But Pfizer.
Right.
Nice. Thanks for having me on, by the way. Just sorry if I didn't say that earlier.
Oh, no worries. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, Sabby, did you tier? Did you say you were sending out mugs on these tiers?
Yeah, the way it's set up on Patreon is it's the third month. So after the third month, they send me a notification that they're sending them out.
Oh, so there is a delay on that. That I'm right.
It's a Patreon thing, yeah, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. My next question is, did you make any plans this year to do more panels like this, like for your topics, or and do you also allow people to submit articles like on local news that, or does that just you just basically pick at random?
So some people actually email me articles. In fact, Roger Meadows does that a lot. And sometimes like if they're with a story that I'm going to talk about, I can use those articles. Not always, but usually email's the best way to reach me because like my Twitter DMs are a mess. And I really don't enjoy going in there, to be honest with you. it's a jungle in there.
Who doesn't?
But in reference to panels, yes, that's something I do want to do more of. I know over at RBN we're talking about doing like a third party candidate summit. That's in the works. So we're going to be doing more things like this. I know I did a millennials panel a while back. I really want to revisit that and do that again because I felt like an hour wasn't really enough time for everybody to talk about their experience as a millennial. So I would like to do something like that again as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I was kind of curious because I know the Vanguard does it a lot of their times. They, they like follow Twitter, follow like us, the different newses that are going on in the world. But I just didn't know if people had submitted articles to you to talk about in their city and you kind of react to them in a way. So I didn't know if that was kind of what you were doing with these tiers and like that with with your different audiences and stuff like that. So that's why I figured I'd bring that up.
Well, one of the good things about the Patreon is that you do get a communication channel to the host if you're in the Patreon. That's one thing. And the other thing people in general could make use of is the Discord.
Right.
Because to be honest, there's not a lot of traffic in there right now. So if anybody wants to get in there and post stuff, it'll get noticed.
Yeah, I recommend that to all of you. Like those are you who are watching that are in the live chat. That's a place where you guys can carry on conversation with each other is in my Discord group. Like when I'm not live and you guys just want to chat with each other, that's a good place to go to.
Oh, okay. So I mean, if you did allow that, how would you submit an article like that for you to react to? How would you best communicate?
Just to email me is the best way. My email address is in the details description under all my videos. Eric, do you have
the Discord link?
What's the Discord link?
And the Discord link is also in the description of all the videos.
Oh, okay.
Let's see.
Okay, so then my next question would then be is Kyle, and this is referring to the Kyle Kalinske video. I know you kind of are despising to the T, so I don't know how you would want to react to this one. But he said he got stale on his videos and stuff like that because he has not done enough to interact with his audience, or he's kind of saying the same thing over and over again. So my question kind of is, do you think there's got to be more interaction with people, less interaction, or you kind of think there's got to be a balance beam on interaction with people to make the content more exciting and keep fresh? What's your opinion about that, Sabby? Since you're you're getting more views and you're getting more subscriptions to your page, because it seems like you're doing a format that seems to be working. So I'm just kind of wondering if your idea can I work with Kyle or somehow, how's that kind of, what's your take on that?
I think that I think people need to interact with their audience. Like I think times have changed. It used to be, don't get me wrong, like I used to watch those short YouTube news clips too. Like that's kind of what got me into like leftist space and updated me about what was going on with like progressive candidates and all that kind of stuff. It was those short clips that I saw from all those different channels, right? But I think what has happened is somewhere along the way, people for whatever reason like more like live streams more, right? So when I started doing videos, I did those short upload clips too. I didn't find it as fulfilling though, because I felt like I wasn't really talking to anybody. There was no there was no one in the chat. It's just me just looking at the camera. So there was no interaction. So that's why I had moved over to live streams, because I wanted to have that type of interaction. I think that people who have been doing this for a long time and they're not used to doing that. They're not comfortable doing live streams. They don't want to talk to their audience because they're afraid of some of the things that may be said. I think they're going to have to get over that, because everybody's doing this now, like for the most part. Like, it's not just the newer people. I mean, Jimmy's been doing live streams for like how long? So
Oh, okay.
I think it's more wanted now. At least that's what I've heard from audience members, that it helps you get to know them. Like, that's how I got to know like Quaker Socialists, and like she helped us with the March for Medicare for All. So like you get to know them on here, and then you can get to know them in person, and then you can work together on other things like direct action and stuff like that. I know some people just don't feel comfortable having that interaction, but I just think things have changed, and I think if you really want to grow, you're gonna have to do that. Like,
right.
I think Kyle is like way out of touch. He doesn't hear from anybody. Like you couldn't reach him if you tried. I don't think. I mean, it's
yeah. I mean, you have to be able to take the criticism, because that's the thing. Is like when you are live in the chat, people can say whatever they want, right? I mean, so if you're going to be sensitive, this is going to be difficult for you, but you're going to have to. Things have just changed.
Right.
Here's a comment. The live chat be mean sometimes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's
Sabby, would you allow me one?
If you want to get a question in, because I got some more questions, the top is off my head. So I mean, I don't want to take any or steal the show here. So forgive me.
No, it's open floor. Open floor. Go, Corey.
I mean, Sabby, would you allow me one more response rant? I'm sorry, I just kind of was writing down stuff during.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So for about 9 months in the beginning of the pandemic, I worked as a loss prevention agent, which going back to shoplifting is basically the person that the store hires to be that kind of security person, and I hated it. I tried my best to undermine it while still collecting a paycheck. Did end up quitting, but I just needed a job. Didn't want to do it. Just that was it. So I worked at a regional supermarket in the Boston area. I saw a comment basically saying that stores have insurance for shrinkage. That's totally true. So in that term, shrink is basically anything that the store can't account for in sales. So they say like, hey, we're supposed to have 10 of this. We only sold 8, 2's missing. That's shrink. And so they'll say it's about like keeping prices, that they just pushing it back on the consumer and making it that kind of thing. It's not about that. So basically the chain that I worked for was unionized. Basically, in my opinion, what was happening is just control of the employee, undermining the union. A big part of it is just loss prevention is there to protect the company from civil litigation. I also wanted to point this out too, is if anybody is in a union, there's something called the Weingarten rights that's named after a labor attorney. It's a National Labor Relations Board thing. Basically, if you're in a union, if you're going to be interviewed for any kind of disciplinary action, you do have the right to union representation. The big thing, though, is that the employer has no obligation to tell you. So that's something that I would always tell everybody.
Lawyer up, right?
Yeah, essentially. So like a big part of loss prevention is weeding out employees within the company. And a lot of that would just be through entrapment or getting rid of people. So like for example, if you had an employee that was being accused of wrongdoing and loss prevention or a manager took them to an office, that employee had every right to say, hey, I'm not going to talk until my union rep gets here, my union steward. And nothing can happen until that union steward gets there. And if that union steward doesn't show up within like an hour or two, that employee is just like sent home, they'll reschedule. And I will tell you this, every single time that we had this kind of situation, and it always brought me pain, and I would just like tell people straight up about this. When they invoked that right and they got the union steward, they kept their job every single time. every single time. If they did not invoke that right, they got fired. That was just it. Every single time.
What's the name of this right called again?
Yeah, it's the Weingarten rights. It's a WEINGARTEN rights. And so that's a National Labor Relations Board thing. Any employee in a union in the U.S. is covered by that as long as you know about it and invoke it.
Wow. I'm going to share this in the chat.
Yeah. So, I mean, I always try to point that out. I think it's,
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it basically comes down to control. It's and it's just like evil. It's just like a lack of empathy because, it's, and even they'll say like, hey, we do this to keep prices down. It's just a complete lie because it's like they're already manipulating prices through like not paying employees enough and all other things. It's just disingenuous. But one thing that also, and this is kind of just more like on a personal level, that's kind of really bad about what these companies do is they do this thing called case building. So basically, like, let's say somebody was just like stealing a $10 item, right? That's a misdemeanor. It's not really a big deal. So what these companies will do sometimes is the loss prevention will basically keep track of that person and follow them as they come throughout the store. And they'll collect all kinds of evidence and they'll wait for them to hit a felony mark, which in Massachusetts is 250. So they'll basically build this case on them and won't actually apprehend them and then take them to court essentially until it's a felony. And so that's just like, it's just a complete lack of empathy because most people, I mean, first of all, the big thing is, I know I'm not going to talk to anybody that's disagreeing here. If you see somebody stealing food, no, you didn't. But, just saying that we're just going to say like, hey, just knock it off. They're not going to do it again. It's this whole thing of just waiting for a felony. It's just a complete, lack of empathy, union busting, this kind of thing. Just a shout out to Suffolk County, which is Boston, Revere, Chelsea, Winthrop. Rachel Rollins did when she came in basically said that a lot of kind of quality of life or petty crimes, including shoplifting, was a decline to prosecute. Shout that out. So basically, like in Suffolk County, shoplifting not being prosecuted. So I always shout that as a good thing. Let's see.
And that was that was a policy decision. I mean, that was just something you had good leader. You had a leader who actually decided to do something progressive, something real, and she just made it the policy.
Yep.
And then you can have this all over the place,
Yep.
And so that's my rant about that. Is somebody that had done that job, forget that, and voter rights, don't cooperate with any authority.
Points. That's points.
I have one last thing. Sorry, is I just got to say this, and this is my last rant. Is Dave Chappelle is frequently taken out of context and vilified because he's a powerful black man with influence that puts his middle finger up to authority. And I don't speak for the whole community, but I'm a gay man, and I really truly feel like this community was basically like sold a lie just to vilify this man, and for what? Because the authority is afraid of him. So that is completely just my opinion. I do not speak for the community. That is one gay man's opinion. And I just got to shout out to Dave Chappelle because basically this guy has single-handedly muscled corporations, has just, he's fearless. And, what are you going to do? Just cancel a good man? Just take him out of context? I just think it's BS. That's all.
Our problem on the left is certainly not Chappelle.
Yeah, that's true. I guess the next thing that's been on my mind is then what do you think? What should we be predicting right now? What do you think is going to happen in this 22 midterm? I mean, do you think the Democrats are definitely in the slot, or do you think the turnout's just going to be like so low that there's just like no way that they're gonna either party's gonna? I'm kind of thinking that. I know for me, I'm out. I'm definitely out of this voting for Democrat because the Democrats didn't show too much of their strength and everything. So I'm wondering if a lot of you guys are like have pulled out and said, "I'm done. I'm Dem exiting," or Republican exiting, or just the whole two-party duopoly exit. I mean, how's everyone feeling about that?
Yes.
Yeah, we're done. Like it. I think the voter turnout for Dems this year, I think it's going to be low.
They're going to get creamed.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be high. I mean, we were just talking about this. We saw Katie Halper did a live stream with two progressive Democratic candidates, and I felt sorry for the candidates. Like I said, it has nothing to do with the people. Like they're good people. I've interviewed a lot of those candidates, but the comments in the live chat and the live stream were not good. It was hard to find a positive comment, and it wasn't about those people.
Yeah, I was in there making trouble.
It wasn't about those people. It was about the strategy, like putting progressives through the Democratic Party again. So I think us having to deal with the pandemic, especially this goes back to the class issue, like for people who, those of us who did not come from money and like we really have to work hard, I think this is just the end. I think people are tired. A lot of people lost their jobs like during like the pandemic and things like that. And then to see the squad not even get in and like, well, to get in but not fight for us. I think that was the last for me was the squad. So for me, I'm done with the duopoly. So I always tell people if you're going to vote, I think that you should vote third party or independent. But I think we need to concentrate more on local politics and things that we can get done in our own state and our own counties instead of focusing so much at the federal level, because we're not going to control what they do in DC as long as the money is there. Like that's the thing. And
so basically what you're saying, Sabby, is that you only think the way we're going to get ever change is definitely hitting the streets and definitely doing ballot initiatives and stuff like that. You're saying forget voting parties, period. Go for ballot initiatives and just hit the streets basically is what, because I've heard that from a lot of all their alternative media like CJ and other people that you associate with, but you think that's the only solution we have left to say forget the parties, period, right?
yeah, because I don't think the Democratic Party is not going to work they don't want progressives to come in. Like these people are trying to go into a party that does not want them. And it's unfortunate, but it just is what it is. Like you can't change the party.
They want them as a brand. They want them
Right.
as a brand, not as to make real
Right.
change.
Yeah, so it's just like I feel like the way we've had change, like on a political level, is people like Shama Sawant. Like she did not run through the Democratic Party, but yet I don't see her on these platforms. So I think that we need to have more people like her on so she can tell people like how she did it and how they were successful at doing it. And Socialist Alternative is a cool group that I think more people should have on. And I think at this point, I think with everything with Joe Biden, I went over his polling numbers earlier tonight. It's a lost cause. I think Democrats are going to get crushed in the midterms. People are not as motivated to come out and vote for them this time. Last time, a lot of the motivation was to get rid of Trump.
Now, see, the thing I want to get into is can we have democracy? Can we have electoral politics without Democrats and Republicans? Because I feel like that gets all intermingled, and people like, Republicans suck, Democrats suck. I'm not voting. Man, well, I mean, there's got to be a way to vote and have democracy without these two parties, or I think that's what we need to really push for. And to me, the path I see to doing that is to focus on the money, figure out we got to deal with the money, and I feel like we need to have demands. We need to get kind of serious and coherent and specific about what are our demands, what are the things we're asking for that separate a Democrat from an independent who has the right ideas and platforms.
Fully, yeah. And to get that list of demands, I mean, there's also things like, ballot access and ranked choice voting that can try to even a playing field for people that aren't in that two-party duopoly. And, just on like a personal level, like what I'm kind of getting, Sabby, with you're talking about class, which is something I'm just very interested in, kind of talking about is on a local level, because, it can seem kind of overwhelming. So for me, what I do is like, what can we do? We talk to our neighbors. Maybe we take an opportunity to talk to somebody we wouldn't usually do. And, I just try to tell people, it's like, hey, we come from all these different backgrounds, endless differences. It's about class. It's about class. You're more, you have more in common with the person that needs to steal a loaf of bread, that person that's in that awful situation in life than you're ever going to be with any of these oligarchs. And so it's just forget about everything else. It's class.
And
we're on this big pool.
And then if we have a list of demands and they're not getting met,
class.
then what do we do?
Yep.
Definitely.
Right. And then when they're not getting met, then what do we do?
Misbehavior. That is the American ideal.
Then you get into direct action, protests, strikes, the whole bit. But you have to have the demands.
Shut down the Capitol with tractor trailers.
Well, one of the things I remember from January 6th, my first thought when I heard about it was, what, we can do that? we can occupy the Capitol and make trouble? I mean, it's left, it's like, we can do stuff like that?
Yep.
I'm not advocating, violence or anything, but it's like,
we always have to keep it peaceful and loving, but we have to misbehave. We have to say no. We have to, get your friends. Let's all decide to not go to work that day. Like, we just keep it peaceful, keep it loving, but don't behave.
Right. I want to shout out this super chat really quick. Thank you so much, ABCD, for the super chat. Yes to third party summit, what Marianne should have done. Thank you so much for the super chat.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, a 3 summit that would be a good thing. Have more summits amongst the new left. So basically, I'm kind of wondering, do you guys I don't know, should we be calling ourselves the new left outsiders more? Because I'm kind of thinking that's what we, us people on the left, the new left, kind of be known as, because we kind of are debunking the old left in a way and kind of throwing them to shame. So do you think the new way of the new left and the new media alternative is kind of going to dominate in 2022 and beyond, do you think?
That's what Jackson Hinkle said. Jackson Hinkle said he thinks that this is the year. I don't know. I don't want to assume. I guess we'll just have to, wait and see. But Jackson Hinkle did say this on one of his streams. He thought that this was going to be the year that was going to change.
Yeah, because I think Kit Cabela even said that he was thinking that this all new left and new alternative is going to have more dominant of them, because the old media and the corporates are kind of losing their touch and everything, and we're kind of bringing more truth to power as outsiders. So that's why I was kind of wondering, do you think if more people kind of heard you and the RBNs, you think that's what's going to make a lot of people speak out more openly, you think, or it's going to open more doors for a lot of other people to speak their mind without being ashamed?
That's a good question. I think so, because I'm noticing sometimes I'll get messages, I'll get emails from people that say they're so thankful that we're here, because they've been feeling frustrated, but they didn't want to say it because they felt like they were being a traitor, I guess, to the progressives, going through the Democratic Party and stuff like that. But at the same time, they had these class issues that they had to deal with on a personal level that those people don't understand. So some people have told me they felt like they would be turning on those hosts, the old left hosts, if they said how they really felt. But at the same time, they're having to deal with the class repercussions, they're unemployed or they're unhoused, and they can't just sit back and continue to hope that this idea of putting progressives through the Democratic Party is going to somehow change things for them in the future when they need help right now. And I think the pandemic is the thing that really woke a lot of people up. So people just really can't afford to sit back and wait. And hopefully our whole goal with this is we're activists with a platform is because we really wanted to encourage other people to start mutual aid groups, to do direct action. If we could reach more, if we had the audience that TYT had, do you know how many mutual aid groups we could have started across this country? So that was the goal with this, was to get people more involved in their community, helping out their community, and not just to rely on electoral politics. I'm not saying you shouldn't have politics at all, but I think we've been doing this 80-20 rule where 80% has been electoral politics and 20% has been direct action. And I think we need to change that, because electorally it's not working out for us right now. We did all the things they told us to do. We supported the squad. We supported Bernie Sanders. Some of us canvassed for those people, and the squad got in, and we feel
got played, and it was they didn't want to get in. But I mean, that's what I like about you and your group in RBN, because it's like people like us in the outside world, it's like, okay, yeah, it makes sense because it's like we're seeing the difference and trying to and we're actually debunking them. But my other question is though, when we do about these networks like RBN and Casa and all these other networks, if we're supporting you on Patreon, are you kind of like in a way helping RBN, or is there like a connection like in a way when we support like one individual or another individual in that, or is it like interconnected?
They're two separate things. They're two separate. So like we're a part of like I'm a part of RBN, but I had my channel before I joined RBN. So everybody has their own individual Patreon. Like Nick has his own. Actually, does Nick have Kofi? No, I think Nick has his own Patreon. JB has Kofi. They all have different things that they use, but everybody has their own individual one. But then there's also the group one, and so the group one for RBN that goes towards just
Okay,
things
yeah,
for
because we asked
RBN.
that, Sabby, is because the fact of because I know you said you were part of the RBN network, and then
Yep.
you ended your show and stuff. And I wanted to ask that because I know you have your own Patreon and RBN has their own Patreon, but I just don't know if you kind of like twine with helping with RBN with some of the funds that they are like behind on something, or since you're part of that and you help them with some of the topics and spreading the word and stuff like that. I just don't know if that kind of is like a as they say, co-opted to work together in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, so the RBN one is for the group per se. Like, so the RBN Patreon will always be more than mine. Like, it'll always be more because people donate more because they're donating to a whole group. So that's for everything for like that channel. But then we have our own separate ones, and that's to support the things that we do individually. So, for example, like JB also has his own channel, and Nick also has his own channel. So the idea with RBN was to create kind of like a TYT style network, not in theory, but to create that kind of structure where we were all under one network, but at the same time, all of us had our own individual channels. That's the whole idea with RBN. So that's kind of like what TYT has. I don't know. Like I've always thought about like Jordan Sheraton was on recently. He was talking about that he thinks that everybody that's on the left should be under one big network, even if it's not on YouTube. Like if it was a total separate thing, because he said that imagine the viewership that would come through and people would get to hear different viewpoints. Like people could hear like if people still wanted to say within the progressive, putting progressive through the Democratic Party, they would hear that input, but then they'd also hear our input of, hey, let's try third parties, or let's try to vote for independence, let's get involved in mutual aid, direct action. They would get to hear both at the same time. But we can't do that because ego.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. I think
right, yeah, because like I said, I mean, it was just kind of like I was kind of. At first, I thought it was when you were teaming up with RBN and you were doing your show. It was like, okay, I thought you were like, because I was under the assumption that you were tag teaming, and you when you're like people supported you, and then kind of like, okay, I'm gonna help RBN like if they need some help or something like with stories or that type of deal. That's kind of was under the assumption, but I'm glad you cleared that up, that it's two separate identities, but they just were helping you share your word out or something like that. So now I kind of get the picture.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why I just want to make sure I was clear. I just was make sure there was a little clarity on that.
Yeah, we all have our own separate shows on RBN, and then we have the round table where we all can come together, but then we also have our own separate channels.
Right.
I think one thing with these networks is to figure out how to run them democratically. I feel like just democracy as a concept is something we need to focus more on and talk more about, of course, with like democracy in companies and enterprises and whatnot. And so if you're going to have a network, like what's the big problem with TYT? It's basically Cenk Uyghur's, clown show, and, it's run by Cenk Uyghur and some shareholders. You know, imagine if back when Jimmy Dore was on TYT, if everyone who worked there or even was a member or some fashion had a vote on how it went and what was covered and whatnot. I think you'd have a very different looking network, you know, today.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
Right.
I mean, it's also the big thing was like with YouTube, it's like it's this concept of like turning it into utility and having it be more of like a public, like we can just like all have a fair share, because, you know, shows like Sabby's, they're just going to be taken down by the algorithm. I mean, if you watch good content like this, it's going to put you into CNBC next or whatnot, and it's just like it's all solely by the money, because it's like you take like TYT, what it started out as like a Howard Stern spinoff, and then turned into like, you know, Billionaire Lefty Hour. So yeah, definitely that concept of democracy is good, and just, you know, also is the trick is, you know, YouTube is where a lot of the audience is. So even though it's like you're fighting up against a wall, you know, one of the things that I think about is even with these alternatives, without really kind of addressing just this monolith of YouTube, which basically I heard that I guess if you just like go by accounts, YouTube can actually be considered like the biggest social media platform in the world. I guess like I heard like there was like over 1 billion YouTube accounts. And so it's just like, you know, you have to address that, because it's sucking all the air out of conversation. And, you know, this is the new television, I guess.
Sammy After Dark.
Yeah, it's Google is the number one search engine in the world, and YouTube is number 2. So, you know, that was the thing about Google like acquiring YouTube, which I wish that didn't happen. I don't think that was a good idea. So even though we have these other platforms, it's been difficult to get people to go primarily over to those platforms, because everyone is so used to YouTube. Like, that's the thing. So it's tricky. I really do think they still have to find a way to break up big tech, because again, it's like YouTube and Google just mainly, they own the game. So these other competitors, like, it's really hard for them to compete. And I know Rumble's, you know, catching on, and Rockfin as well, but when it comes to the structure of the platform, they're not there yet. I think that's the thing. And I've noticed this in Eric, you've messed around like on Rockfin and stuff too. Like, I think they still have a ways to go.
Yeah, I mean, Rockfin's good. I'm glad they were there. I wish their interface didn't suck. So Rockfin engineers, get on that. But yeah, thank goodness it's there. I mean, and Rumble and everything else. I mean, antitrust is just a huge big deal, and it's another one of those things, you know, that doesn't get nearly enough attention. It can be technical. It gets into. I mean, you gotta have a functioning government if you're going to have antitrust enforcement. If you're going to keep, you know, these businesses in check. I mean, just the whole, it gets ridiculous. I mean, the whole concept that Comcast owns NBC.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how is that a thing? I mean, that is just, it's just beyond incomprehensible as just a thing that shouldn't be allowed, and it's just there. And it's just like, how is that a thing? I mean, we
Well, I don't think media companies should be able to donate to politicians either, because Comcast donated to Joe Biden. I said, so if they own, you know, NBC and the debates are on NBC, who do you think they're going to favor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other part of this that I'd like to see in general is there are fixes to these things. There are ways that these can be dealt with, you know. But of course, you have to have a government that works for people and not for dollars. But we should be talking about the fixes too, because that gives people hope. It gives people a path. If you're talking about these big companies, I mean, when, you know, breaking them up is just a no-brainer, and that can happen today. I mean, we have, you know, the Congress has the committees and has the power and the things to do that. It's being worked on. I mean, it needs to be pushed, and of course, it needs to be 10 times more. But you know, simply breaking them up is a good first step. If you have one that's so big like a YouTube, well, you can turn it into a utility. But then even beyond turning it into a utility and making it a common carrier that has to carry everyone like the phone, you can even go a step further and basically have the government buy it, but then not hang on to it, but rework it into a worker-owned co-op, a worker-owned governed model. I mean, can you imagine that?
I think tech
if
corporations
YouTube,
are getting their bridges, to be honest with you, because it's like, you got Facebook now acting like they're, want to set. Because the next question I want to is really kind of it's getting kind of stark and kind of dark in my eyes. But I mean, it's censorship.
it's supposed to be a fun Friday.
Joe Rogan thing.
All right,
and
go ahead.
this whole
Oh, one quick thing. Let me grab this super chat. Thanks so much, Craig Kidd, for the super chat. Ruling class is nailing the class solidarity. Yes, thank you so much for that. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Daniel.
I was gonna say, how's the ruling class nailing the solidarity? Okay. But I want to bring up the next one. This next question is about censorship, because I don't know what your guys are thinking when it comes to this whole censorship with this Joe Rogan that whole blew up with misinformation and everything. Do you see this now getting to the point where we may have to go out in the street to knock off the censorship with these corporate interests and everything? Because it seems like, to me, it sounds like this is like a fear tactic they're doing with this whole censorship. But I just want to get your guys' opinion about this, because it sounds like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like to me that they're getting more afraid of us as we're kind of debunking their narrative every time they put a story out or anything like that. And it's like they now want to shut us as we're trying to, bring a different perspective. So I don't know. Is it time for us to make it like we need to do a rally or something to protest against the censorship and tell them that, hey, they need to back off and lay out hands off us?
I agree. I think that's another thing that needs to be added to the list of demands that you created, Eric. That's another thing I think that should be added.
Actually, it's on there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I might have added it late though.
I recommend, Daniel, that
correct
you.
me if I'm wrong, because like I said, I mean, it's just gotten to the point with me, and I mean, I'm hearing a lot of different viewpoints from different sides that are like, okay, like Harlan's Media got censored, and I think, Sabby, you said you got censored and striked, and then we had Joe Rogan lost a lot of his episodes because of the pressure that Spotify got because of the whole artists and them withdrawing from that. So I just was kind of wondering, has this gone to a point where now it's like we need to take action and say, hey, kind of let us have our viewpoints, and we're not going to get involved with your viewpoints, but kind of like step back a little, you think?
I mean, I'll echo Sabby that I do think it's at the end of the day distraction politics to keep us from talking about the money. Also, just to loop back to the monopolies and stuff like that. I'm not like any scholar of history, but you have the precedent with Teddy Roosevelt breaking up Standard Oil. I mean, the monopolies are probably even grander now, but there's precedent there. I mean, they're going to distract it to keep us from talking about the money and the class issues, and they want us to keep talking about all of these things that they're going to spin and get people on TV and get people riled up about. They want us to focus on that.
Yes,
Right.
and I'm actually going to
That's
send
the comments
over.
in losing power. Yeah, fearing losing power, but at the same time, are they like trying to say that we are kind of overstepping on their foot or something like that? Because this is what this whole censorship is. It's not just losing power, but it's like, okay, yeah, but you're kind of giving misinformation and help you clear it out, so that way you're not. I don't know. Is this like, is this what the kind of war we are at? Is because we're trying to speak a different perspective than them?
I'm putting this link here in the chat because everybody should go watch this when they have a chance. And I have to go in a couple of minutes because I told the hubs we're gonna finish that finale. But CJ did a stream about this the other day, Wednesday night actually. So I put the link in the chat. I should have said something. It's CJ. It's a straight out of politics. Straight out of politics. And he was talking about the new rules that they're coming up with, that the government is coming up with, not YouTube, not Google, but that the government is coming up with, and who can be labeled a terrorist. So here's the link for that. I highly recommend that when you guys have time, you go watch this. because they're coming up with a whole like new set of rules, and that's coming from the government. About if you talk about certain things, you can be labeled as a terrorist in this country. You can be labeled as a terrorist.
One of the, I think so much of it comes down to propaganda. It really is a propaganda war. One of the people that I always call out for people to check out is Caitlin Johnstone, who writes about this a lot. And if you're not reading if you're on the left and you're not reading Caitlin Johnstone, then you're really missing a big part of the picture, because she really digs into it. And it's just this whole concept of like, you don't even have to control people with force and if you can control what they're thinking. It's basically the difference between forcing someone to do what you want and making them want to do what you want and think that it's their idea. And we're in a propaganda war here.
I definitely agree with that. And one thing that I kind of liken it to is it's like how credit card companies, they want you to constantly be in debt, but have enough money to make the minimums. It's like they're kind of getting this balance in that kind of control where it's like they need us to be like, just desperate enough that we're going to follow the narrative, but not so desperate that we no longer have anything to lose and therefore can just completely, it's that game and it's that control and something we got to fight.
I'm going to do a show about that, about like, maybe I could do a panel or something about that, because that's really important for people to know. A lot of people don't know about credit and don't fully understand it unless they mess up and they end up with bad credit, right? But what you just said about the minimums, that's very important, because some people don't know that you're not supposed to just pay the minimum, even though they tell you only have to pay the minimum. Some people don't know that. I mean, we aren't taught this in school, and not everybody has parents that understand it and can explain it to their kids either. So that would be a good thing to talk about credit. I think it's just something that people need to fully understand how it works.
100% agree. Also on that topic, that's a great point. One thing that I also think about is how in school they don't teach us basic legal things like, don't talk, lawyer up. If a lot more people were taught that, then you'd have a lot less innocent people incarcerated. So, but
that rule's not for the peasants.
I agree. The other one too is when they let police officers come into the house, you don't have to let them in. I see people make this mistake like oftentimes in movies and TVs, and I'm like, no, you don't have to let them in. If they say like, can we come in? You can say no.
No, say no, thank you.
Yeah. And furthermore, they have to present a warrant. But what's the problem is that people aren't taught what that looks like. People aren't taught what to expect, and we all know how it is. Like, cops just are going to be like, hey, well, I'm just going to say what I'm going to say, and I'm a cop, and they're going to assume that this person that they're talking to doesn't know anything, and they're just going to be like, oh, well, I have to do it. And by the time that's all cleared up and done, that person's been entangled in the legal system, and lives ruined for no reason.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, that's why I think I asked that, because I mean, it seems like this is how they're waging war against us, because we're kind of like speaking the truth here, and that's why I just figure I asked that if this is gonna be this is gonna be like you said, the class versus the elites, and that's why I'm kind of wondering if this is gonna be like the never-ending struggle to to get the word out because of the corporate elites. It's like, okay, this is too much, you're going too far. I'm like, oh well, what about you? I mean, like, it's just like we're kind of pointing that out to the point, trying to make you realize like, no, it's the other way around. But I guess I'm going along with it.
So Sabby, we don't want to keep you from your premiere too, or the finale.
I want to get those comments on Rockfin, Eric, and then I have to head because I just realized what time it was. Yikes!
I know, we're getting so fun over here. It's like we don't even recognize the time.
It's a good time.
Thank you so much for the tip, Michael. And thank you for the tip, Roger. So much forgot to mention before about Sharpton. I would expect a man who follows the Baptist Christian denomination of following the teaching of Jesus, who was crucified for raising hell at the money changers, the big banks of their day. I'd expect if he was that interested in theft, he'd point out Wall Street theft, which has been and continues to steal people's wealth via homes and now apartments. Eric, I'm with you. Here's what we do.
All right, Roger.
I saw Biden just making a tepid threat to possibly break up the meat packing industry because of price
What's that
gouging and
stupid?
stealing
That's
from
stupid doing
ranchers.
that.
With just that tepid threat, meat packers backed off. What about a law give presidents the authority through executive order to nationalize industries where the public have not only become so dependent upon, but also have shown a record of abusing the public trust and now must be taken over and ran by the government to ensure the public benefits. Section 2 can also not only allow presidents to take it over, but also have the president give the company to its workers to help them restructure into worker-owned co-op. Section 3 would say if the president wishes to privatize government agencies that originally started out as government agencies, then the governor must first seek approval from 2/3 of Congress. This law only pertains to giving presidential unilateral authority to convert companies to government agencies, not the other way around.
Wow,
Thanks
Roger's
so much for
definitely
that,
going.
Roger.
Definitely, Roger Meadows has definitely got digging into research that's so, like, I didn't even know that. But I mean, again, it's getting back to the fact of, like, because the thing that kind of bothers me a little bit, and I don't know, I want to get your guys' take on this, is, yeah, Brian Coon did all that and did it with the tech companies with the executive order. If he's going to do it with the meat packers, but he's choosing not to. So it's like, what is that kind of like defeating the purpose a little bit? If he's not going to do it.
I don't know. I have like probably 3 minutes.
All right. Well, I got a good question to go out on, which I should probably already know, or maybe that's obvious. But for you, Sabby, is the singing voice on your intro song your voice?
The singing voice.
That's
That
you.
is me. Yeah.
All right. I should.
Yeah. Somebody, Jesse Jet.
Yeah. How did that come about?
He said he heard me do it one time on a live stream, and he took that clip, and then when he created the intro song, I guess he must have looped that. But I was like, I said that? He was like, yeah, you said that on a live stream, and I clipped it.
Yeah, Jesse Jet, very cool. Very cool song.
Zabby, why don't you take that and market it and make that an album of that doobie doo? So that's because that would be a good lullaby song to put anyone to sleep.
Yeah, that was funny. I didn't even realize I did that, but yeah, Jesse's awesome. He has a song he wrote about the squad. It's really good.
And even just like Indie Left's opening song.
Mm-hmm.
Indie Left.
Well, Sabby, I guess I'll just say thank you so much. This is awesome, and definitely appreciate you. So thanks for doing this with the Patreon subs. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us, Sabby, because this is interesting. Like I said, I mean, you are great at what you're doing, and I encourage you to keep it up and spread the word to your other comrades and tell them that you guys are like on top of your because definitely you're educating a lot of people, and a lot of people are waking up to the real truth that's going out there. Because like for us being outsiders, we're definitely we're gonna have to endure this for the rest of the future, because everyone's seeing what's really going on, and you guys are waking everyone up to the truth. So congrats again.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, guys. I am actually going to. I have a TV show date with the Hubs. We're gonna finish the book of Boba Fett. So the final episode is posted, so I'm gonna go check that out. But guys, thanks so much.
And I just
coming
wanted
on.
to also say, if you want to see like some of the demands and solutions things I've been working on, you can go to erictred.com that I got up on my name right there. And the other thing I'll drop a little hint on is, if you like what you're seeing from Corey and I, we're actually kicking around the idea of doing a little something with each other. So it's still in the development stage or the conceptual stage, but keep your eye out for that, perhaps.
Cool.
Oh, I mean, that's good.
But mostly
I
keep
mean, I'll
tuning into
definitely
Sabby.
keep in touch with the Patreon. Just send me messages if you want me to come on and do everything.
Say that
All
again,
right,
Cor?
guys.
But yeah, thank you so much and enjoy the show.
All righty. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.
Up them fights.
Have a good one. Thank you.